We're here at the South Carolina Department of Probation, Parole, and Pardon Services in Columbia, South Carolina, where Susan Smith is pushing for her freedom. This building behind me is where her parole hearing will be taking place. The interest is high. You can see members of the media staked out, and the security is high as well. Police are everywhere, as today is a huge day when it comes to justice for Michael and Alex, her two young sons. And her push for release isn't going to be without big opposition. A special episode of Opening Statements starts right now. Good morning to you, and welcome to this special episode of Opening Statements. I'm your host, Julie Grant, and we're going to start things off as we always do by having you go ahead and grab that cup of coffee. It's time for my opening statement. Imagine the horror. Imagine how horrifying it was for precious babies Michael and Alex Smith. All alone in their mother's car, drifting down a boat ramp into a lake. The water would fill up their car as they were trapped inside. Those beautiful, healthy baby boys would die together on October 25th, 1994. Today, Michael would be 33 and Alex 31. It's been 30 years since their mother made the cruel and calculated decision to end their lives. And she should thank her lucky stars that the jury didn't end hers, because they could have. Instead, they showed her mercy, not knowing that the law at the time in South Carolina provided for a chance at parole after 30 years. But that chance today doesn't change the fact that Susan Smith is a cold-blooded killer. She selfishly murdered her own baby so that she could continue her affair. She betrayed her loving husband, David, their children, and the entire public. The parole board should keep her locked up for life. The kind of punishment that Susan Smith really and truly deserves isn't legally an option. Michael and Alex deserve justice. So keep her where she is as we continue remembering those beautiful boys. That's my opening statement on this Wednesday. Let me know if you like it. We have a very special show planned for you with very special guests to talk all about the case of Susan Smith and her parole hearing today.
I want to say to my babies that your mama loves you so much.
Late October 1994, cameras from local station WYFF capture the pleas of 23-year-old Susan Smith as she begs for the return of her toddler sons, Michael and Alex.
Whoever has them, I pray every day that you're taking care of them, and know that we will do anything we will to help you to get them home back to us.
The search for the boys made national headlines after Smith told police that her children were taken when she was carjacked by a black man at a rural South Carolina intersection.
I don't think I'm any more of a suspect than anyone in this case right now.
9 days later, she confessed that she rolled her car into a lake with the two boys strapped in their car seats.
Susan Smith has been arrested and will be charged with 2 counts of murder in connection with the deaths of her children, Michael 3 and Alexander 14 months.
In 1995, her defense team claimed that she wasn't in her right mind when she killed her sons. The jury didn't believe her, and she was convicted of their murders and sentenced to life in prison. According to the South Carolina Department of Corrections, Smith has worked as a teacher assistant, a library helper, and a landscape laborer during her time in prison. She's also had multiple disciplinary actions since 2010 for drug possession and for having sex with 2 prison guards. Alfred Rowe spoke with News Nation about an affair that he had with her in the early 2000s.
I don't know how I allowed it to happen. I guess being young, never being around that many women before, and then being basically locked up just like they were for 12 hours a day, I just fell into her sweet talk and manipulation.
Susan Smith is now up for her first chance at parole. Her ex-husband, David Smith, the father of the 2 boys she killed, plans to be there at the hearing.
At this time, I don't even know if I'm going to even write something formally on paper. I may just speak from the heart. Her only doing 30 years would be an injustice to Michael and Alex. She doesn't deserve to ever be free again.
I want to bring in now our first special guest, retired Judge Larry Seidlin, famously presided over the Anna Nicole Smith body custody case. Judge, good morning. It's great to see you. We're curious what you're most interested to hear today at this hearing.
Well, I wouldn't believe anything she said. The question is, would you have her at your Thanksgiving dinner? Would you have her sitting there with your family members? I'd be running. She's scary. She's evil. What mother on this earth would take her 2 little boys, strap them in a car, and put them in the lake? And she's claiming that she wanted to go in the car with them. She's too much of a coward for that to take place. I don't believe anything she says or anything she does. She's in this jail like it's a Greek orgy. She's having sex with prison guards, doing drugs. The punishment isn't even stiff enough for her in this jail.
Right, Judge. I couldn't agree with you more. I agree with everything that you just said. And she is going to be given an opportunity to speak today to this parole board before they will hear from her ex-husband, David Smith, and the prosecutor who put her away, attorney Tommy Pope. Tell me, Judge Seidlin, is there anything that Susan Smith could say that you think could possibly convince this parole board to release her here and now?
Well, they need a 2/3 vote to say you're going to be paroled. I don't think she's going to get 1 vote. To go along with what she's going to tell you, you'd have to buy the Brooklyn Bridge at the same time. I don't trust her. I have no faith in her. She's just the picture of evil. If you put evil in a dictionary, you put a picture next to it. She's a terrible human being, committed a heinous crime. We spend every day, we who are parents and individuals that have nieces and nephews, we spend every day trying to make their life better. And this woman takes the life of these little children in a moment into the lake, and a horrible death. They died. They suffered. I don't believe anything she says, anything she does, and these parole members are going to feel the same way. But you have to go through this. Each day the parole board hears about 60 of these cases. They run through them, and only a small percentage, I think it's 4 or 5%, are eventually given the right to parole. And therefore, they have to give this hearing, but I believe the report card has already been given. It's a failure. She's a failure.
Judge, for years in your courtroom, you've decided what weight to give what evidence. And here we know that the board is going to get to hear from David Smith. They're going to get to hear from Tommy Pope, and they're going to get to hear from Susan Smith, in addition to looking through her prison record and going through all of those past infractions. Tell me, if you were sitting on that board, what would you give the most weight?
I give the most weight to the nature of the crime, how it took place. And that initially she blames a black person for the taking of these 2 children. And then for days she maintains these lies. And as time goes by, her consistency is broken. She had an opportunity when she drove the children into the lake to save those children. She never grabbed that opportunity, maintains lies, created a racist atmosphere in South Carolina, in that area of South Carolina. She's a terrible human being. I wouldn't let her back on the street. She's sending letters, love letters, to other individuals that find her an interesting character. How's that guy gonna feel if she gets out and she gets displeased with her life situation with this new guy? Are those children gonna be safe? Is anyone gonna be safe? I wouldn't let her near a wooden knife and a wooden fork.
Judge, tell me, if her trial happened here and now in our present day, same circumstances where the solicitor's office is going for the death penalty, do you think she would be so lucky if the case happened now?
That's a good question. Times change. The juries, when they heard her case, were told she'd get life imprisonment, that she'd never get out of that can, never get out of the jail. And they didn't know that parole allows you to be reviewed after 30 years. If it was today, the prosecutor would seek the death penalty. It's very, very difficult to get a death penalty imposed by a jury. And the white individual has a better chance to escape the death penalty than a black individual. Therefore, you have a white woman facing the death penalty. She would have a better chance to not get the death penalty. And there's still race involved in the judicial system. I said it years ago, but it still exists, unfortunately. And therefore, the prosecutor might seek the death penalty, but it still might not be granted by the jury. Jury might not want to put her to death.
Great insight you're sharing with us. Judge Larry Seidlin, always a pleasure to have you on Court TV. Thank you for being part of this special show this morning. Take good care.
Bye.
And coming up next on this special episode of Opening Statements.
I want to say to my babies that your mama loves you so much.
We're going back to 1994 and taking a closer look at the case that gripped the nation. The public reaction to Susan Smith 30 years ago. And later in the show, one of the former corrections officers who had a sexual encounter with Susan Smith while she was behind bars joins us live. We'll hear what he thinks about her wanting parole.
Case, brutal murder of Laken Riley.
We have a suspect. He did not know her at all.
Such a violent act. Will there be justice for Laken Riley?
The murder of Laken Riley. Live coverage today, only on Court TV. This week on Opening Statements.
Will Susan Smith walk out of prison a free woman? We're live from South Carolina for Wednesday's big parole hearing.
Opening Statements with Julie Grant. Weekday mornings at 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Welcome back to Columbia, South Carolina, the state capital. We are at the Department of Probation, Parole, and Pardon Services. A live look for you at the hearing room, where the hearing for Susan Smith will be taking place in just a short time. As you can see, the seating is very limited. Our Court TV cameras are going to be filming this and streaming it all live for you, and we will take you live once the proceedings kick off. You know, when Susan Smith first asked for the public's help in finding her missing boys, Michael and Alex, the story gripped the hearts of people all around the country. And we now know that what she did was actually drown her boys in the pursuit of a man. But at the time, many people believed her carjacking story. Let's go back in time together to 1994.
I want to say to my babies Your mama loves you so much.
I don't know if it was the tears or what, but she seemed very credible, and certainly her husband standing behind her kind of helped that image.
It was a desperate search for two little boys, little Michael, little Alexander, 3 years old, 14 months. Where are they?
I was working in that television market at a station there, and we leapt upon that story because stuff like that just didn't happen in a small town like Union, especially in the Union County. So we were instantly trying to get the word out, you know, about here's the description of the guy that she gave us, here's the description of the car.
I was stopped at a red light. In a second, he was in my car. He just opened the car door, and I just screamed.
When I first heard the Susan Smith story, I was a bit skeptical. Remember, this was about 4 to 5 years after the Charles Stewart story in Boston, where you remember he claimed that carjackers, or black carjackers, had killed his wife and shot him as well.
She had black men hiding from everybody, wondering if they were going to get picked up, and they hadn't done anything wrong.
I mean, I didn't believe her from the beginning. What she ended up saying about, you know, an unnamed black man carjacking her just didn't make any kind of sense.
I'm a black man, and what would I want to drag a car and take, you know, two white children for? What would I want to do it for?
It feels like it was just yesterday. The memory of her standing there pleading for the return of her sons was just so heartfelt. And then to find out that she did it and blamed someone else, it was such a betrayal, honestly.
Really was a betrayal. Now let's bring in more of our special guests, an original member of the Court TV team. We're so pleased to have legal analyst and former Court TV correspondent Beth Karras with us. She's an attorney as well, and high-profile criminal defense attorney, death penalty certified. He's also a law professor, Don Malarsic. Great to see you both. Beth, we want to continue with that trip back in time. Take us back to when you remember covering this case and the first impressions you had of Susan Smith, please.
So, good morning, Julie. Thank you for having me. When the story first broke, I was 4 months into what would become a 19-year career at Court TV. So I was just out of the Manhattan DA's office and, excuse me, thinking very much, you know, like a prosecutor, and this is a horrible what happened, and there's no question that this is a horrible thing. I followed the story, but I was just gearing up and getting on air and starting to do my first cases. Fast forward to June of 1995, I did go to Union, South Carolina on behalf of Court TV to cover the camera access hearing. Ultimately, cameras were denied at the, at the trial, but we were in the midst of O.J. Simpson's murder trial at that time. We're about halfway through the trial in June of 1995. That trial ended in early October, as you may recall. So I did take the opportunity to go to the lake where she had allowed the car to, you know, slide down the boat ramp and into the water. It was just so traumatic. There was like a little memorial there for the boys. And I saw her in court. I met Tommy Pope, the prosecutor at the time. But alas, we didn't prevail in getting cameras in. No surprise there. There was quite a reaction post OJ anti-cameras at the time. But it was, you know, just a horrible story, because we don't expect mothers to kill their babies. And when mothers kill their children, there's usually a reason behind it, right? They're usually very mentally ill, they're stressed, postpartum depression, some reason, and Susan Smith was no exception. And the jury heard about her suicidal ideation, her depression, and that is probably why they spared her the death penalty. And they were not allowed to know that life did not mean life without parole. They were not allowed to be told that it was a parolable sentence. I believe the law is different today, but at that time, they probably thought they were giving her a life without parole sentence.
Beth, thank you for all of that. That's exactly what I wanted to ask Don about. Don, Tommy Pope, someone you know from doing legal analysis with in the present day, really believes that if the jury had known that life really didn't mean life, and at the time, as Beth noted, it only meant 30 years, she's got a chance at parole, the outcome may have been different. You, being someone who tries death penalty cases, knowing that she could have been put to death, I'm curious if you think that had the jury got the instruction they would get today, that life is, in fact, life with no chance at parole, if you think we would still have had the same trial outcome.
Yeah, that's a great question, Julie. I mean, I do. I think that this is a really tough case to get 12 people to unanimously agree on the death penalty. And I say that knowing that the crime is horrific. It's probably one of the worst forms of murder that you could possibly imagine. But as Beth said, as we've heard, there was a lot of mitigation. There were some real significant mental health issues. Susan Smith had been molested by her stepfather starting at the age of 15. Her natural biological father committed suicide. She had her own suicide attempts. And the defense team rightly focused on that and talked about weighing that mitigation against the horrific nature of the crime. And I think the jury, in doing that, came to the right conclusion. I would expect the same conclusion today. Today is different. And today jurors have a number of options. They have life without parole. There is the possibility of life with parole after 25 years or life with parole after 30 years. That's in the state of Ohio, or the death penalty. So the jury can make an informed, intelligent decision that they don't want this person to ever leave prison by imposing a sentence of life without the possibility of the parole. And they're instructed in Ohio that that means this person will die in prison. Now, they also have options of life after, life with the possibility of parole after 25 years or 30 years. So it's really tough to speculate what a jury would have done 30 years ago if given those options, life with the possibility of parole after 30 years versus life without the possibility of parole. But I do think, Julie, that it would be very, very difficult to get a death sentence in a case like this, even today.
Don, thank you for that. Beth, I want to talk more about the victims, Michael and Alex, with you. You've had an illustrious career, covered so many cases. Is this one of those that has really stayed with you, that you think about it, you still really remember all the feelings you had when you were covering it back in 1994?
It is, and the other one that has some parallel to this is Andrea Yates. And I was at Andrea Yates' second trial in Houston, and she is the severely mentally ill mother who drowned her 5 children. And she was so weak after drowning the 5th child. She lined up the first 4 she drowned in the bed, putting the infant in the arms of the eldest, that she couldn't lift the 5th child out of the tub of water. They were all one by one drowned. That was also a very traumatic trial. Now, I didn't see the facts unfold in Susan Smith's trial because I wasn't at the trial like I was at Andrea Yates. But when you have these mothers killing these babies they bore, they nurtured, it is just counterintuitive to the maternal, nurturing nature, right? So, there has to be some underlying reason. We know Andrea Yates now is civilly committed for the rest of her life. I mean, she even rejects the opportunity to have a hearing to see if she is now fit to re-enter society. It's like she doesn't want to. So Susan Smith killed her children. Andrea Yates killed her children. No question about those two. And the other one that sticks with me, a mother accused of killing her child, is Casey Anthony. And she is a free woman. Very different facts in that case. But all these cases involving mothers accused of or convicted of killing their children do stay with me. Women who kill, they kill differently from men. They don't kill indiscriminately like some men in like a robbery and a stick up in a store and you kill the clerk, right? Women kill their children, they kill their lovers, their husbands, they kill because they're mentally ill, they're stressed, whatever. Generally speaking, there are outliers like Eileen Wuornos, the serial killer in Florida who was executed. But women who kill are different from men, I have found.
You're right. Oh, that's great analysis, Beth. I want to get predictions from you both on what you think will happen today. Don, let me start with you, please.
Well, this is a tough one. I think we heard from the judge at the top of the hour say that this is a very, very rare occurrence when the parole board grants parole for someone who is accused of murder. And I think the statistics that I saw were about 7 or 8%. And because of the nature of the crime, because quite frankly of the media attention, and because quite frankly she does not have a spotless record while in custody, I do not see the parole board recommending clemency. I don't see the parole board recommending her release. I don't know that she's going to get any votes, let alone the 2/3 necessary to get out.
Dawn, thank you for that. Beth, your prediction, please.
I actually agree. I do not think she's going to get out. The Department of Corrections, California calls it corrections and rehabilitation, really does. It's supposed to focus on if a person is really ready to enter society, but we're a very punitive society, and the parole board was overwhelmed with letters of people saying, don't let her out. People want her to continue to be punished, even though today she's not the same person she was when she entered 30 years ago. Let's face it, she's not the same person. Yes, she did those acts, but she's a changed person. We all change over time, but I still think that she's going to be denied, and probably will be for several more parole hearings.
Such great insight and analysis from you both. As always, such a treat having you both here on this special show. Beth Karras, Dawn Malarczyk, thank you both kindly. Still ahead here on Opening Statement.
I remember that first video we talked about when Susan's giggling about being on TV and David looked like he'd lost his children. So when he tells you that all he was focused on was finding those kids, that was exactly correct.
Taking a deep dive into the mind of killer mom Susan Smith. A double board certified psychiatrist joins us live next to weigh in. Plus, the prison guard who made headlines for having a sexual encounter with Susan Smith while she was behind bars joins us on the show live. Thanks for being with us here on this Wednesday morning. This is Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant, and we are live at the South Carolina Department of Parole, Probation, and Pardon Services. Try saying that 3 times fast. This is in the state capital of Columbia, and this is where the hearing will be taking place for convicted child killer Susan Smith. Now, she's going before the parole board today to request release after serving 30 years of her life sentence. And she says she believes she's paid the price for killing her young sons, Michael and Alex. Now, this despite making up a story that they had been kidnapped by a stranger.
I was stopped at a red light. And in a second, he was in my car. He just opened the car door, and I just screamed. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Shut up and drive."
Now, after her arrest, we found out that Smith killed her son so that she could be free to carry on an extramarital affair with a man who apparently did not want children. Let's talk about Susan Smith. Let's try to get into her mind a bit. I want to bring in double board certified psychiatrist, Dr. Dom Sportelli. Dr. Dom, good morning to you. How we wish you could personally evaluate Susan Smith and share that assessment. But based on the information you have, things you've read, clips you've watched, information that you have available to you, what do you think's going on in her mind?
Yeah, good morning, Julie, and thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure being here, and such an incredibly tragic case. And while there's never, ever an excuse to do something so horrible, what we try to do is try and understand the minds of these individuals to perhaps in some way, shape, or form prevent this from happening in the future, or at least have red flags. So to your point, I think it's important to understand the psychological and psychiatric definition of what even happened. And what we do is we call this filicide. Filicide is just the fancy word for when a parent kills a child. Now, when we look at all of the data, Julie, of history of filicide, we see basically, we could sort of summarize it into about 5 reasons or 5 motivations that a parent might do such a horrible thing. One is what we call altruistic filicide, and that means that somehow the parent thinks that this is best. It's almost like a mercy killing type circumstance if the child is ill or something like that. That's number one. Number 2 is if the individual has psychosis or a severe mental illness and is actually delirious or so severely depressed that they're not thinking clearly and they engage in these acts. Number 3 is what we call fatal maltreatment, which is basically neglect, but it's not intended. The child dies unfortunately, because of neglect. 4 is, this is the important one, I think, in this case, is the case of what we call the unwanted child, where the perpetrator feels that the child is a hindrance, that the child is somehow holding them back. In this case, 2 children, is holding them back for their ultimate goals. And then the final 5th one, Julie, is what we call, this is the most rare, and this is a revenge killing, where the parent actually engages in filicide as a revenge tactic. Now, these all sound horrible. Keep in mind that filicide is very rare. It's about 1.5 per 100,000 individuals engage in something like this. But with regard to Susan Smith, and really paying attention through documentation and literature and her case, the defense has brought up issues about narcissism and borderline personality type disorders and histrionic personality disorders. And I think it's important to explore these. Understand that these are personality disorders that are usually poor coping strategies. And I know that sounds simple, but these are people that have just developed coping with life in such an unpositive way that they're engaging in a terrible lifestyle. So narcissism, she fits some of these criteria, meaning she's the center of her own universe. She doesn't see outside of herself. Everything that she's doing is for her. And, possibly, God forbid, it's horrible to even say, even as a behavioral health specialist, to kill your children to forward your idea to engage in a relationship with someone that doesn't want your children, that is unbelievably narcissistic, because it's all you. You're the center of your universe. People with narcissism are very selfish. People with narcissistic personality disorder lack empathy. They require admiration and attention. So she does seem to fit a lot of these qualities. But I do want to emphasize, too, that, based on our review, Susan Smith doesn't necessarily fit one criteria. She also falls into categories of what we call borderline personality disorder. And that is where individuals avoid abandonment at all costs. They become so codependent in their relationships that the relationship is literally thought to be their sole source of happiness and meaning. So if they lose a relationship, they just completely collapse. And that could have certainly been a motivating factor in her case as well.
Wow, this is really fascinating, Dr. Dom. I have a clip I want to play for you now. You're going to see Tommy Pope, the prosecutor who put away Susan Smith, talking about how when he would observe her, it was always about Susan.
I remember that first video we talked about when Susan's giggling about being on TV and David looked like he'd lost his children. Her behavior tells us that contrary to what that jury was thinking, which was you'll be remorseful, you'll think about Michael and Alex, Susan thinks about how things affect Susan.
We know that David was lied to in such a cruel way, Dr. Dom. I mean, he really and truly thought, just like the rest of us, thought that those kids were really missing and that she had really been carjacked. And so when Tommy was saying she would be in front of the cameras, and Tommy noticed it was almost like she enjoyed the limelight. David's horrified, sick to his stomach, and she seems in some sick way to like it. What does that tell you about her?
Yeah, Julie, I think what that does is it really points towards that narcissistic personality style, which again is that center of attention, the importance that you feel. You are literally, I mean, the world basically stopped when this took place, and she was the center of her universe. And that just fed into this narcissistic personality. I'll add one more to this, Julie, and again, that's why this is so complex, is another aspect of personality problems that people develop, unfortunately, called histrionic personality, where she does meet some of those criteria as well. Again, needing to be the center of attention. And then I think a third point to that is that, when she's doing these press conferences and she's actually giggling a little bit, it gives you the shudders almost to think that there is zero empathy there, that she's not thinking of the loss of her children and just this horrible grief and circumstances of the death of these poor innocent children. So that again points itself towards that incredible lack of empathy. And Julie, there's never, ever an excuse for such a horrible, horrible circumstance or for someone to do this. But, you know, we do see links, Julie. You know, we see links with individuals that have severe depression or severe psychosis. One that we often see are individuals that engage in filicide, killing their own children, do have previous suicide attempts. And as your previous guest had said, you know, Susan did have a pretty troubling childhood when you look at it. And again, no excuse, but you can see how this formulated over the years. You know, her first suicide attempt was when she was 13 years old. You know, her father, her biological father, committed suicide after the divorce when she was 7. And then she had a second suicide attempt around the age of 17, I believe. So, you know, she really struggled with self-image and self-worth and, you know, thinking about ending her own life. And likely, you know, we see these tumultuous relationships that she was in, and it appears that some of those relationships gave her meaning. So very, very, very troubling. And I think the coup de grace, unfortunately, was when the latest boyfriend, who she was really supposedly in love with, wrote her that letter and said, you know, I don't want to be with someone with children, and we're going to break up. And I think that may have been the straw that broke the camel's back here.
I think you're right. Dr. Dom Sportelli, always great to have your expertise on the program. Thank you so much for being part of this special episode of Opening Statements. And as we go to break, I want to show you a live look at the room where Susan Smith will be appearing. Oh, this is a live look from above. Look at this. We've got a drone shot for you of the Department of Probation here in Columbia, South Carolina. We are right outside of this building where Susan Smith will be appearing virtually to plead with the board to let her free. We'll be right back.
The case of Susan Smith.
The convicted killer became infamous after drowning her 2 young sons and then trying to mislead the public into thinking that they had been kidnapped. Now here we are. This woman is up for parole.
It's all about justice for Michael and Alex.
I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure you stay behind bars.
The Susan Smith parole hearing. Live coverage today on Court TV.
I was stopped at a red light, and in a second, he was in my car. He just opened the car door, and I just screamed. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Shut up and drive."
Look for anything, any sign of evidence that might pertain to this case.
Susan Smith has been arrested and will be charged with 2 counts of murder in connection with the deaths of her children, Michael 3 and Alexander 14 months.
Welcome back to South Carolina, where we are counting down to Susan Smith's parole hearing, scheduled for this morning. I want to show you a live look at the room where it's going to be taking place. You see, there are several people filling the room up at this time. A live picture, again, courtesy of our Court TV cameras, which are serving as the pool cameras, but no action just yet. She's going to appear via video conference, but appearing in person will be her husband, David Smith, and the prosecutor who put her away, attorney Tommy Pope. Now, we know the parole board's going to be looking at Susan Smith's behavior behind bars. That's going to be one of the big considerations. They're going to have her prison record. And after serving that life sentence after receiving the life sentence, rather, in 1995, she started serving her time at the Graham Correctional Institution, located in Columbia, where we are this morning. But just a few years later, let's take a look at what happened. So in the year 2000, Smith was discovered to be engaging in sex acts with 2 corrections officers. She was penalized for multiple incidents of drug possession and also penalized for self-harm. She was disciplined in April of 2009, April of 2010, and in June of 2012, looking at her record right here. So the board's going to be looking at this record as well. They're going to be considering all her past infractions and her conduct behind bars. How will that weigh in to her pending parole decision? I want to bring in our next special guest. He is one of the guards who engaged in a sexual relationship with Susan Smith while she was behind bars. Former corrections officer Alfred Rowe is with us. Alfred, good morning. Thank you so much for being a part of this special episode. And may I just start by asking you to take us back to the beginning. How did you form this relationship with Susan Smith?
Well, good morning, and thanks for having me on. It formed over a course of about a year and a half of working the night shift and being locked up essentially with Susan and approximately 1,000 other female inmates every night that I worked, and having to be engaged with each and every one of them that requested my assistance with anything, as I was the one officer in charge of the entire institution when I was on duty.
Alfred, wasn't the fact that she is a child killer off-putting to you?
It was, but yet as a correctional officer and working in that setting, you're required to put aside what they're there for and still deal with what the inmates request or ask of you, as long as it's within the policies of the department.
Alfred, tell me, we were just talking with a psychiatrist about getting into the mind of Susan Smith. Hard to do. Do you feel that you know the real Susan Smith?
I don't think anyone knows the real Susan Smith, and that may even include Susan. She's one that can change in the flick of an eyelid during a conversation. So
And Alfred, you do not know. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I know I don't know who the real Susan Smith is.
And from what I understand, you don't believe that she should be granted parole today.
No, I don't think Susan's ready to rejoin society yet.
Alfred Rowe, certainly appreciate your time this morning. Thank you for being so open and sharing what you've shared with us here on Opening Statements. Take good care. Now, that is all for this episode of Opening Statements, but our coverage continues. I'm staying here in Columbia, South Carolina, to continue monitoring this parole hearing for Susan Smith. I'm going to be talking with her ex-husband, David Smith, as well, as soon as the hearing is over, and with attorney Tommy Pope.